They are the insiders. Chris Johnson, Pierre LeBrun, and Darren Dreger. Gentlemen, the games involving the Habs and the Leafs have kept George Peros and the Department of Player Safety busy during this preseason. Are we set to see the rekindling of this once storied rivalry again, Dregs?
Well, the fans are certainly hoping that will be the case, Gene, and we're going to find out October 9th when Toronto takes on the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal. The rivalry, though, is raw. There's no question about that. It stems back, of course, to the preseason game where Cedric Paré of the Toronto Maple Leafs took out Patrick Laine. Now, perhaps some of the heat is cooled by Laine coming out describing it as an unfortunate play, saying that he put himself in that position a little bit. He did acknowledge that Cedric Paré sent him a text afterwards. So again, maybe that has cooled things a little bit. But I think there needs to be an appreciation here for what Cedric Paré had to also go through. I'm told that the Toronto Maple Leafs security group had to intervene and disable Paré's social media accounts based on death threats and abusive comments directed at him. So it's one thing to have a raw rivalry. It's another thing to cross a line.
Well, in the meantime, the key injuries, a lot of the silliness and the things that we've seen in preseason has had a lot of people asking the question, why are there still so many preseason games in the year 2024 in the National Hockey League? Well, as I reported this week, the NHL and NHLPA actually have had discussions about reducing the preseason going back to last year. And that's going to be further discussed in the CBA talks that begin in the new year. But in the meantime, the NHLPA plans to canvass its full player membership on this issue. Do you want to reduce the PA and reduce the preseason and add 2 regular season games? Well, the fall tour started today in Buffalo, in Prague, and will go to late December. And then the PA will have a better idea if its membership is in favor of this plan.
And then when the puck does drop on the regular season, first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini, is supposed to make his NHL regular season debut next Thursday. But is that in doubt now, CJ?
Well, it's certainly in some question, and at this point in time, it's maybe a little premature to say which way it's going to go. What I can tell you is there doesn't seem to be too much concern about this injury, the lower body injury that knocked Celebrini out of a game this week has forced him to miss a couple practices. But certainly whether or not he can get back in a week's time is up in the air. And, you know, everyone's going to exercise some caution here. He had a very busy summer after being selected first overall. He had some nagging issues through this camp prior to crashing into the end boards. And so it will really hinge on how he recovers in this next week, when he can rejoin his teammates on the ice for practice, and when ultimately he's cleared to play again for the Sharks.
Elsewhere, the Leafs' efforts to re-sign Mitch Marner is clearly the biggest contract story in Toronto right now, no doubt about that. But it's certainly not the only thing that Brad Treliving is dealing with right now, Darren.
No, at least a couple of players that, you know, he's going to eventually have to focus on at some point this year. But the Maple Leafs are doing their level best to keep the contract business out of the daily news feeds. And, you know, I'm looking at a younger player, restricted free agent, end of the year, and Matthew Knies. We can see he is going to be an impactful Toronto Maple Leaf for the future. There really hasn't been any meaningful dialogue between Knies' agent and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe that heats up towards the end of the year, unless somebody is willing to engage. Now, veteran defenseman Jake McCabe is a little bit different. They've had ongoing discussions there. They're really not that far apart, but there's also no sense of urgency other than the obvious that McCabe is scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and he's most definitely interested in getting something done sooner than later.
Hey guys, the Amazon All Access Face-Off series is coming out on Amazon Prime on Friday. Do you think we can see a season 2, CJ?
Well, the discussions are far enough down the line that I'm told we should probably hear in the next few weeks whether that is the case. There's certainly lots of interest from all the parties here. I think ultimately what's going to determine if they go ahead with the series number 2 is how is this one, you know, fair? Is there ratings? Is there buzz? Is the audience dictate and demand that they should do it? Because there's a high level of cost associated with producing a show like this. But from the NHL's end, it's been all gravy so far. They've even had a number of players, I'm told, put their hands up and say they'd love to participate in the next go-round if there is one. We won't have to wait long to find out.
The Four Nations Face-Off gets underway mid-February. The roster is supposed to be set by the first week of December. That's less than 2 months away. Are we getting any pushback about that date, Pierre?
Yeah, NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, after the Board of Governors this week, pointed out that there has been some grumblings from the GMs in the Four Nations about how early that roster deadline is, but he also said it's not moving. And, you know, obviously for USA Canada in particular, there's so many players to pick from on the bubble. You only have about 7 weeks of regular season hockey to make your final decisions. The full rosters will have to be in by December 2nd.
They are the insiders, Chris Johnson, Pierre LeBrun, and Darren Dreger.